The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus said to his disciples, "I still have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. When the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all truth. For he will not speak on his own, but he will speak whatever he hears, and he will declare to you the things that are to come. He will glorify me, because he will take what is mine and declare it to you. All that the Father has is mine. For this reason I said that he will take what is mine and declare it to you." The Gospel of the Lord. We celebrate today the great solemnity of the Most Holy Trinity, which is one of the many great mysteries of our faith. And as you may have heard before, I'm sure you've had other priests explain this in the past, but a mystery, as we understand it in the church, is not something like a mystery novel or something like that where you have to discover, find out the answer, and then you go, now I know, I didn't know, and now I know the answer. Whereas rather, mystery in the church is about something that is continuously revealed. It's something that you don't ever reach the end of. You are continuously coming to know more and more and more about it. It's not something you don't know and that one day you will know. It's something you do already know and you are still learning how to know more deeply. And so it is with the Trinity, because if you think about it, God is infinite, right? And we are finite. So if we're trying to understand the mystery of the Trinity, of the interior life of who God is, when we are finite, think of it this way. If you remember in math class, can something that is finite contain all that is infinite? No, because it's finite, right? It's limited. There's only so much of it. And something that is infinite, the other way around can work. Something that is infinite can know everything that's finite because it's included in it, right? It makes it easier that way. So it is with God, that we can never fully know God. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually a very good thing, because it means we can continuously come to discover more and more and grow deeper and deeper in love. We don't if you learn about basic math, 1 + 1 is 2, now I know that. Well, there we go. Once you get the basics of addition and subtraction, it doesn't change. There's nothing really more to it. And you can add different forms of math or other stuff like that, but once you know it, and there's nothing really exciting to learn. You can't have that discovery. Whereas God, it continues to grow, we continue to learn. I remember having a situation where it was a kid who I was talking to maybe around the age of 6 or so, and they were talking about, what they were doing in school, and they were excited about getting close to coming towards grade 8 eventually one day. And they said, when I get to grade 8 and once I finish that school, I'm going to know everything. Of course, we laugh, right? Oh yeah, I'm sure you'll know everything. Every single thing. I'll have learned all of the subjects. I will know everything. Everything? Absolutely everything. I'm like, well, you're further ahead than me. So that's impressive. But, we chuckle because it's true. There's always more to learn, and it's something that when we are younger, we assume there's a lot less to learn about the world. We assume we can gain it all much more easily. But as we grow older and older, you start to find just how vast knowledge is, how big the world is, and how much bigger even is God. We cannot wrap our minds around him. But that also doesn't mean we can't know certain things about him. It doesn't mean that we know nothing and that we just take a blind faith that is just arbitrary. Rather, we can know many things, but it's penetrating that knowledge and growing deeper and deeper in that understanding. And so I think that the reason, you might have wondered perhaps, I don't know if you did, but the gospel reading today, why would the church choose this reading for Trinity Sunday? And I think one of the reasons is that as Jesus says, that when the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all truth. That we need the Holy Spirit to be able to reveal and teach us that understanding about who God is. Because if I simply go to someone who has no faith and I try to explain the Trinity, they're just going to roll their eyes. They're going to say, that sounds like superstitious mumbo-jumbo. I actually just had a conversation with someone online where we were talking about another one of the mysteries of the church, about the Eucharist. And I had just explained something basic about the Catholic teaching, and he made a ridiculing joke about, believing some things from an old book about a dead man and believing that the Eucharist can turn into that dead man and all this stuff like this. And I'm like, okay, well, this is clearly showing someone who has no sense or framework or anything to really, as a basis of understanding for this. And as many things of our faith can sound quite silly without the depth of understanding. So it is with any other aspect of knowledge, in fact. Like if you try to explain to people long ago, even trying to explain to some people today, talking about something like quantum mechanics and how those things work. Or if you were to talk about how, if you're having a nice juicy steak or something like that, that you're eating mostly nothing. That the atoms are so small, it's mostly just empty space there. Things like that. If you don't understand the basis for molecular design and other things like this, someone just making that statement on its own, you go like, well, that's dumb. That doesn't make any sense. And it's because we have to first come to a basis of belief. And then it grows on that. And even more, what there is a supernatural sense of belief when it comes to God. Because whereas we can look at things on a natural sense and measure them and examine them and say, okay, here's how I can fully grasp and understand and replicate things of nature, which is why we're able to develop the sciences in that manner. But God is not measurable. God is spiritual. God in his very nature is spirit, which is something that can only be connected through the supernatural, through the spiritual. We cannot take the natural and try and the physical realm and try and calculate it out that way. God's not calculated out by math. It doesn't work that way. And so that's why we need the Holy Spirit to give us that insight of faith. And you may have noticed that in your own life, that as you grew in the faith, once you were baptized, even maybe once you were confirmed, that the more you learned about the faith, the more you were able to understand. But similarly, like a little child, who says, I'm going to know everything by the end of going through elementary school, when we finish doing our catechesis in elementary school, or maybe some of us when we were older, that's not the end of it. If we think, now I know everything about the Catholic faith, well, you probably don't. Because the reality is, we're always learning. We're always growing deeper in our understanding. We have to keep contemplating and pondering and seeking and learning. Because otherwise we don't go anywhere. And we just get left with that early childish kind of notion, thinking that I already understand the whole faith. And so when we come to learn about the Trinity, the basics of it is that we understand God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, that he is one God, not three, one God, one being, and three divine persons. Now, just like I said, in math, that doesn't equal out. Doesn't make sense. How can you have three persons but one being? Well, and that's because God is not measured by math, but by relationship. That God is within himself a relationship of love. Just like if you want to express love, you have to love someone, right? There has to be someone to love. And so if you do not have someone to love, and you do not have someone to reciprocate that love, and you have no gift or offering of love or fruit of love to be produced by that love, then it's not love. And so then the question becomes, how does God, who we say is love, how can he be love if he is just one person? Because otherwise it means he has nowhere to give his love until he creates humanity, which would then imply that God needs us in order to be love, which means his very being is dependent upon our existence, which kind of puts us higher than God. Well, that's not true, right? So, within God himself, he is a relationship of love, the lover and the beloved and the fruit and product and gift of that love. In and of himself, in his own very being. Now, of course, as you may be trying to contemplate that, think about that right now, that concept, you might get the gist of what I'm saying, but of course, if you try to penetrate deep in it, there's going to be a lot of questions. And you're not going to be able to feel like you can really fully grasp your mind around it. There's going to be a sense where certain parts evade, your intellect. And that is because God is beyond us. But what we can do is continue to ponder about these things. And this here is really the key, is that we need to take that time on a regular basis, every day, to ponder about who God is and what he has done. To think about those mysteries of the church, those mysteries of our faith. And think even just like that description of the Trinity I gave to Potter. What does it mean for God to be love? And what does that mean for how he loves me? And what does that mean for how I am called to love? What does that look like? And to just reflect on those things, ponder on those things. And what happens is the Spirit, as we hear in the scriptures today, will guide you into all truth, will continue to allow us to penetrate more and more deeply those mysteries, that we come to know God more and more and more. It's amazing that we can actually do that we can actually continuously learn more. Now, some of it might be, it's great to find some good books on the subject, other people who have studied these various areas and what they have contemplated about. We can learn to maybe correct our misunderstandings because we sometimes get false ideas about God. Like, for example, earlier in the church, they believe some people argued that maybe Jesus wasn't actually divine. Maybe he was just a human being and he wasn't God. Well, that changes everything in the equation, right? And it also changes things for our salvation. Or that maybe what if Jesus became God later? Well, and if that's possible, how does one become infinite if there already is the infinite out there? How does that happen? Or to think that maybe, it's different ideas that people had about how does the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit work, or how are they described? Or, is God three modes of one being, that God sometimes is the Father, sometimes the Son, sometimes the Holy Spirit, or that he suffers from multiple personality disorder, that, he's switching off between them and having arguments with himself or something like that. None of those things are true. But you can see how you might get confused about that or wonder about that. And so we need that time to really learn and know. If we love God, we want to know more about him. If you love somebody, you want to know more about them. And that requires us to take the time to say, the intellectual pursuit of our faith is not something that ends at catechism when we were kids, but it is a lifelong journey. I keep learning, I keep discovering, and then the beauty is that I also then ponder and meditate on those truths. I reflect on them. I sit with them. And God reveals many mysterious wonders in that quiet and solitude of prayer. That things that maybe nobody else has ever known before or discovered before. And God communicates those things to the heart in a way that might even be unexplainable. And that is why it's so important we take that time of contemplation, because there are things that I can't quite communicate with you and explain to you. Things that I know in the heart that I've learned and discovered about God, of where I've encountered him, and I know it in my being, but how to put it into words is not something so simple, because it's something revealed by the Spirit. So only God can reveal it to you. And God can't reveal it to you if you're not listening, if you're not looking, if you're not seeking. And so that's why this great mystery of the Trinity, as in all the mysteries of our faith, require us to continually seek that knowledge and wisdom and prayer. Because it doesn't end here. The amazing thing is the saints describe that even in heaven, we will continue to contemplate for eternity and discover for eternity deeper and deeper depths about the mystery of the Trinity, of who God is in his very being.